Hi, everybody. First off, I hope you had a great 4th of July and that you had a chance to get some relaxation in, even with your busy schedules. This week, we're going to be discussing the SA2 rough draft, peer review, as well as the SA3 research proposal and the editing practice number 2 assignment that we have for this week. You might have noticed from the announcement that originally we had a class discussion for this week, but in light of all of the work we have this week, because it's a busy one, I decided to cancel that. And actually, when I do something like that, I just give you credit for it automatically. So you'll notice in the gradebook that you automatically have full credit for the class discussion number 4. So it's basically a freebie for this week. So hopefully that frees up your time a little bit to focus on these other more major assignments. So with that being said, let's jump into the SA2 rough draft. So as you go through the announcement, you'll notice that I gave you a sample outline for how to structure SA2. And that's mainly because a couple students have emailed me, wondering if the way they're approaching the organization is okay, or asking advice for how they might organize it. And with SA2, really, as long as you are making sure that you provide a fairly solid summary of each article and then synthesize the articles by comparing and contrasting the points the authors make on your topic, you should be fine. However, it is of course important that you create body paragraphs that focus on a main idea each in order to ensure proper organization. But how you approach doing that is fairly flexible as long as you're getting the basic job done. However, with that being said, I did provide a sample outline if you prefer a little more structure going into this. And it's pretty straightforward. It has your introduction, which provides an overview of the topic, explaining why that topic's relevant, why the scholarly discussion surrounding the topic is relevant. And then your thesis statement, which is basically going to identify the key points of disagreement or agreement between your sources that you're exploring. And that's really your snapshot of the academic discussion surrounding the topic you chose. And then the rest of the paper is developing that snapshot, developing that thesis statement. So, for instance, body paragraph 1 might summarize the main ideas of source number 1, and then body paragraph 2 would summarize the main ideas of source number 2, and then body paragraph 3 will synthesize the research and findings of sources 1 and 2. And then following that basic pattern throughout the essay, introducing sources, summarizing them, and then synthesizing the sources you've looked at so far. And of course, I'm sure you could see that there's room for some of your creativity here. For instance, you might, instead of just summarizing in one paragraph, you might decide that you'll summarize for the first portion of the paragraph and then add some synthesis at the end. So there is wiggle room in how you approach this. And again, as long as you're doing the summary and you're doing the synthesis and your paragraphs are organized so that they each focus on a central idea, which helps to develop your thesis statement, you should be fine. And then your conclusion, there's different approaches to this. The simplest is summarizing the points of disagreement or agreement between your articles. So basically providing one final summary of the synthesis that you did in the paper. But other approaches include looking at the discussion as it's unfolded through your sources, and maybe thinking about where that discussion is going to go in the future. What's the next step for this academic discussion? If you were to do more, look at more sources, what do you think they're going to be looking at in the future, for instance? With that being said, other things to think about as you move through SA2 and create your rough draft for this Wednesday is to make sure that you have 5 academic articles from the library databases. You want to avoid newspaper and magazine articles for this assignment. Now for SA3, newspaper and magazine articles are okay as some of your sources, but the purpose of SA2 is really to review academic literature on your topic. And of course, newspapers and magazines can have helpful information, but they are not considered academic. As you finish your rough drafts for SA2, other resources you can take advantage of include the PowerPoint presentation that I posted to the Module 2 area this week. And that's really a walkthrough that identifies key points to think about as you revise your literature review. And this was created by a different instructor for another class. So the topic they're looking at is probably going to be very different than what you're looking at, but the basic strategies they go over are going to be the same for the kinds of work we're doing for our SA2, because a literature review as a genre tends to be pretty uniform throughout all kinds of different topics and all kinds of different fields. In addition to that PowerPoint, there is a sample student essay posted in the Module 2 area, which hopefully will be helpful to you to get just an example of what someone else has done fairly successfully for SA2. Now again, this was written for a different class, and it's focusing on a different topic than what we're going to be looking at. But the strategies that the student engages in should be helpful for you as you work on your essay. Now, a couple things to note with this sample essay is, for that class, the student included an annotated bibliography at the end of their paper, and you do not do that for our SA2. For our SA2, all you need to include at the end of the paper are the regular APA references. Please do not include the annotated bibliography. That does not count towards the length requirement. Also, there was an issue with the running head and how the student has formatted that in the paper. So just take a look at the announcement, and I kind of break down some of those little details of formatting that the student made a mistake about that you don't want to do. And if you have any questions about the sample paper or just any questions about SA2 at all, feel free to email me and I will get back to you. Now, another thing to note for APA formatting, the example that I refer to as I grade your formatting is on pages 188 to 191 of the Little Euler Handbook, and that's really the definitive example of APA formatting that we're using for our class. So make sure that your paper is formatted and documented according to those formatting guidelines in that sample. Now, as far as inserting your header, APA is a little tricky because you insert a running head on the first page, and you actually have the words running head in front of the abbreviated title, but the following pages just have the abbreviated title. There's no running head before them. So I've also included in this week's announcement just a brief sort of step-by-step guide on how to insert that running head on the first page, the title page, and how to make sure that the words running head do not show up on later pages. So definitely check those out. Now moving on to the peer review. So this week we are completing peer review. So just like we did with SA1, make sure to submit your SA2 rough draft to 2 different places. You want to submit it to the Dropbox, which is where I give you your grade and feedback. But you also need to submit the SA2 rough draft to the peer review forum created for SA2 and the discussion board. And a couple things to keep in mind as you do this. First off, make sure that you're posting your draft to the correct area of the discussion board. We only have one discussion board for the class, so all of the different discussions and peer review activities get posted to that place. So you just want to make sure you find the right spot to put your essay. Second, make sure that you're posting the correct assignment. So you want to make sure, for instance, that you're posting the rough draft of SA2 and not the annotated bibliography. Again, you need to submit the right assignment in order to get the feedback you need, but also to get credit. And finally, make sure that you're posting it as a doc, docx, or RTF file type. We've had some issues with students not being able to open other students' assignments, which again makes it hard for you to get the feedback you need, but also I can't give you credit if I can't open your assignment. So again, doc, docx, or RTF files. Now moving on to SA3. So this week we're starting SA3 pretty light. We don't want to overwhelm you too quickly, so all you need to worry about right now for SA3 is reading over the assignment sheet that's posted in the Module 3 area and completing a research proposal. And this research proposal is pretty straightforward. It asks you to identify your topic, and you can always change this topic later on for the rough draft, but you should have a fairly strong working topic to finish this research proposal. And it should be a topic that you can make an argument about. And the big difference between Essay 3 and Essay 2 is Essay 2, you are reviewing what scholars have said about a topic, and that's pretty much it. You're just giving a snapshot of that research. You're not making an argument about what should be done to fix the problem or anything like that. Essay 3, you're reviewing research in order to make an argument. Essay 3 is an argument research paper, so you're using the research to support your stance, your argument regarding the issue you've chosen. And you have different options for the issue you could choose for Essay 3. You could continue, for instance, with your topic from Essay 2. For instance, if you really like the research you found on your topic for Essay 2, you could use that research in Essay 3. And even it is possible to even use some portions of Essay 2 in Essay 3 if it's written on the same topic. But it's very important to keep in mind that the purpose of Essay 3 is argumentative, which means it's very different than what you're doing in Essay 2. So even if you use some of the same sources or use some of the same information, you're going to have to use it for a very different reason. And that means you will need to heavily revise any content or any use of sources that you carry over from Essay 2 into Essay 3, because you really need to use it to support your argumentative stance. For instance, Essay 2 asks you to do a lot of synthesis, right? That's really the focus of Essay 2. But in Essay 3, synthesis really isn't going to help you develop your argument at all, because the focus is not so much on how these authors agree or disagree. It's more on how does that research help you support your own argumentative stance. However, if you decide not to use the same topic from Essay 2, that's fine. You can choose a topic related to gender. Also, you can choose a topic related to food or agriculture. One of the most popular topics for students to pursue for Essay 3 relates to GMOs, and often, should GMOs be legal in the state of Ohio? Also, some of the best papers I've seen in regards to food or agriculture focus on GMO labeling. Should GMOs be labeled in the state of Ohio? And when you choose your issue to focus on for Essay 3, and when you start thinking about the kind of argument you're going to make about that issue, something you want to keep in mind is, who's in a position to make the course of action you're calling for happen. So for instance, if I am really interested in GMOs and I'm either arguing for or against them, I got to think, really like strategically, what kind of argument do I want to make? Do I want to argue that they should be completely outlawed? If so, who's in a position to make that happen? Are we talking about the state government? Are we talking about the federal government? And these are really important questions to ask ourselves. Also, within the government, what agency is responsible for deciding what foods should or should not be allowed? So for instance, is it the Department of Agriculture? You would want to do some research and figure that out. And often when you look at your sources will give you clues about who's in a position to make these decisions. And one final thing to think about for Essay 3, one of the most common problems or challenges that students encounter is limiting their focus, right? Students often try to make arguments like, racism is bad, racism needs to be stopped in the United States. And of course, the problem with an argument like that is it's so broad and it's so multifaceted that it's really impossible to develop that in any kind of focused, coherent argument paper. So instead of making broad claims like that, like racism should be stopped, we want to try to focus on really specific claims within that broad category. So for instance, if I was interested in doing an argument paper related to racism, I might think about what are ways that the United States government can prevent racial discrimination in the wages earned by U.S. citizens, right? Like, what strategies can the Department of Labor, for instance, enact to prevent that kind of wage discrimination based on race? Or, for instance, I might ask a question, will police body cameras help to prevent racially motivated shootings, right? And then I might take a stance either arguing for or against the use of body cameras as a way to prevent that specific race-related problem. So again, one of the most important keys to success for SA3 is really to narrow your focus as much as possible, and then find relevant research related to that focus, and then decide what argument are you going to make and how would the course of action you're calling for be put into effect. So the last written assignment that we're going to be working on this week is the editing practice number 2 assignment. And this is actually your last editing practice assignment for the semester. And this week we're going to be focusing on our reading in the Euler Handbook, which covers shifts, appropriate words, precise words, idioms, and words that are often confused. In other words, we're going to be looking at issues of usage and word choice, because being able to use the appropriate words for what you're trying to say, the meaning you're trying to get across to your reader, is really vital to clear, concise writing. And using the wrong word in the wrong context can really distract and confuse readers in ways that doesn't just make your essay confusing, but can actually interfere with your overall controlling idea and just weaken your essay overall. So as you do that reading, also take a look at the PowerPoint posted in the editing practice number 2 area of Blackboard. This is available in the Module 3 area. And there's also a worksheet there in the Module 3 area for you to complete and submit this week. Well, I think that covers it for our written assignments this week. I know it's a lot. My best advice is to just stay on top of those deadlines as much as you can. I think each individual assignment should not be too overwhelming if you give yourself enough time to do it. And I know that's difficult to do in a 6-week class, but even if you can just give yourself a day to focus on each assignment, that's going to be a lot less stressful and I think a lot more manageable than trying to do multiple assignments on the same day. I know, easier said than done, but do your best, and I look forward to seeing your rough drafts this week for SA2, and I also look forward to getting to take a look at the first assignment for SA3, the research proposal. And personally, I feel like SA3 should be a little easier for a lot of you than SA2. SA3 is shorter than SA2, but also I think that being able to make your own argument about the topic, having that freedom to take a stance, is something that hopefully will get you invested in the assignment and ways that maybe are more difficult with SA2, which asks you to, stay objective and kind of remove yourself from the issue to a large extent. So with all that being said, best of luck this week. And again, feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and take care.